to the Road to the Garden podcast. I'm Matt St. Jean here, bringing you the show less than 2 weeks out from the Big East tournament, the Road to the Garden. We're only a couple exits away here on the highway to Madison Square Garden. I'm joined by Tommy Godin, as always.
Always a pleasure, Matt.
And Paul Fritschner making his first appearance on the show. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, thanks guys for having me on. I appreciate it. Hopefully the numbers stay up, even though I'm coming on this and I'm not dragging anything down. Hopefully,
we're counting on you to boost them. So,
all right. Well, we'll see. I'll go ahead and tweet the link out, and we'll see how we do here.
Sounds good. We got a fun episode planned. We talked a lot of Marquette on our last episode. We're going to be talking a lot of Xavier today, especially with the Musketeers getting the big loss at home to Villanova on Tuesday. They have a big game coming up tomorrow night, a little Friday night Big East hoops. We got Marquette maybe putting this thing together to win the Big East outright for the first time in school history. UConn may be back, obliterating Providence last night. We're going to be talking about all of it and more. A couple reminders before we get into the show. First, we've teamed up with SeatGeek this season to get you the best deals for tickets to your favorite teams. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, and they're here to give you some great deals. Get in on the fun and head over to SeatGeek, download their app, and use code NCAA Hoops Digest for $20 off your first purchase. And as always, this podcast is presented by House Enterprise and in partnership with House of College Hoops. Head over to our site, house-enterprise.com, for more info. Now, I know we're going to get into the basketball here, but Tommy, I know you had a burning topic to bring up before we get to that.
Yeah, and it's for our special guest here, Paul. It's awesome to have you on. I mean, ironically, National Chili Day. So I don't think we could have picked a better day to have you on. It's been a big day for you. I saw Sugar Mommy Melanie slid into your DMs on Twitter. So, I mean, things are pointing up. But I wanted to get your thoughts on National Chili Day. I saw you got some Skyline Chili dogs. Tell me about those.
Yeah, so if you don't know Skyline Chili, it is a cuisine that is near and dear to my heart here in Cincinnati. As somebody that is not originally from the area, but that has had ties to Cincinnati for my entire life and has come back here on holidays and everything else, and now is a permanent resident of Cincinnati. I love chili. I love being around here. Now, here's the thing about Skyline Chili. And if you are a listener of this show from Cincinnati, you've heard me say this before, but since this is a broad Big East basketball show, I will explain this to people that may have not been to the Queen City yet. The thing about Skyline Chili is everybody looks at it and they say, man, that looks very visually unappealing. Well, fellas, the problem is that you're looking at that through the lens of actual chili. It's not actual chili. Chili is in the name, but the problem with Skyline Chili is that it gets branded as chili. What it really is a meat sauce that you then add the ingredients to chili later on the coney or on the spaghetti or whatever you want to do. So, for example, a coney all the way would come with the little coney dog plus the chili. And then you would add mustard, onion, and cheese on top. Now, if you get the spaghetti, you could add some beans, whatever. For me, I don't like the mustard. Just throw the extra onions on there, get the cheese, get that mustard out of here. Keep the chili on there. That's what we're talking. That little splash of cinnamon and chocolate. That's the secret sauce in the chili. Ooh, it's a unique thing. Look, if you're not from here and you don't know it and you don't really appreciate it, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you if you say it looks disgusting. But don't knock it till you try it. It's pretty good. I enjoy it. I love it. Had 3 cheese conies, no mustard, heavy onion with a Mountain Dew earlier today. Hope we're not sponsored by Coke on this program. But yes, it is National Chili Day. And I did have an interesting DM earlier this afternoon. Always looking for another stream of income, so we'll see where Melanie comes through. That is true. Yes.
I got to get myself some Skyline Chili because I agree with it is just a meat sauce. Like that's and it's good.
Yeah,
it really is. It's good.
Yeah, it's just a meat sauce, and then once you get if you're getting spaghetti and you say spaghetti and onion, then it becomes the chili with the noodles and everything else. But if you're just looking for, that's why you can put it in a dip. You add some sour cream, you add some cheese on top, and you can just do it as a dip with tortilla chips. There's a lot of ways to mix and match it, fellas.
Can you smuggle some on the plane from Cincy for the Big East tournament, and we can do a taste test?
That's a great point. So when I was broadcasting out in Bowie a couple of summers ago when I was doing minor league baseball, one of the guys on the team was here from Cincinnati, and his parents were listening to the broadcast. And one night I was talking about how I missed Skyline Chili. I hadn't been back to Cincinnati through the seasons, way too busy to be able to leave. So I was talking one night, middle of the summer, got slow during a game, and I was mentioning how Drew Rom is from Cincinnati, and I was just asking the question on the air, do you think he likes Skyline Chili? And then about a week later, his parents came and visited, and they just put a box of cans of Skyline Chili up on the press box window. So if you want a box of Skyline Chili, and here's what I'll say, and this is the last thing I'll say on this topic because I know you guys want to talk basketball.
We can talk food all day.
Skyline Chili is best consumed in the restaurant. Skyline is not the same if you get it from the drive-thru and you take it home, even if you live right around the corner, the cheese starts to melt.
Wait. Back up. That's an option? Drive-thru Skyline Chili?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, you got to get it on the road. You got to get it on the go. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can get, yeah. So it's best when you're in a restaurant. You don't get it at the ballpark. I mean, you can, but you don't get it at the ballpark. You don't get it to go. You go in the restaurant and you get it there. Now, when you get the cans, that's best for like when you're making a Skyline dip with the tortilla chips and then you have the cheese and everything like that. That's where that's best. But yes, there's your Skyline Chili for the day. It is National Chili Day. So whether you like Skyline Chili or not, enjoy yourself some chili.
Yeah. That's you gave us a whole 5 minutes on Skyline Chili there. That was an impressive monologue right off the dome.
But there you go. There's what you wanted to know.
I didn't eat dinner before this show, and now I am starving after hearing that.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Something not as appetizing this week, possibly Xavier basketball. The Musketeers 1-3 in their last 4. They lost at home to Villanova as Villanova picked up their first quad 1 win. I know Tommy's going to want to talk about that, but I want to start on the Xavier side here. What's gone wrong down the stretch? Is it just Fremantle? Is there something else going on?
Well, I think a lot of it is Fremantle, right? You're missing your leading rebounder, you're missing your second leading scorer, and most importantly, you're missing a lot of the depth. Now, I don't think the depth has been as big of an issue as some people have made it out to be, in the sense of guys getting tired, because, Tommy, you would know just as well as anybody, you look at Villanova, they made the Final Four last year playing 6 guys. Look at North Carolina. They went to the national championship basically playing 5 guys. So, and frankly, they should have won the national championship last year. So when you look at it from that perspective, the depth as far as playing 6 players is not so much of a concern to me, because when you get down into the nitty-gritty of March, when you get to the end of the season, you have your guys, you have your rotation. You're playing 6 guys. Maybe that 7th guy is coming off the bench for most of these Final Four type teams. The difference with Xavier is that this is a player that is not that 7th player that is now not getting minutes. That is a player, that is a starter, that is one of the best players on your team, your second leading scorer, that all of a sudden that offense has evaporated. It's not there anymore. I think the depth of the team really showed against Villanova. Yes, Xavier probably beats Butler with Zach Fremantle. Yes, Xavier probably, I would say, maybe only loses 1 game in that stretch here now with Fremantle in the lineup. I'm not going to say that they win all 3 games that they've lost, but if you think about it, this is a Xavier team this year that should have beaten Marquette last week on the road. They probably win that game with Fremantle in the lineup. Probably should have beaten Butler. Well, not probably. They should have beaten Butler, should have beaten DePaul. Now all of a sudden you're talking about, I'll give Villanova that win, because probably somewhere along the way Xavier picks up a second loss. Now all of a sudden you're talking about a Xavier team which is 2 losses in conference play and is probably going to win the Big East regular season title. So a lot has gone wrong. The offense has certainly taken a dip. I mean, this is a Xavier team that prior to this stretch now without Fremantle, especially in the last 4 games, Xavier got off the bus and scored 75 points. And now all of a sudden, 3 of your last 4 games, they haven't even cleared 70. So that's taken a dip. Part of that with Villanova is just that they played extremely slow, a classic Villanova style in that game, where they just want to get into a low possession game, slow you down, grind it out, do what you can to just keep this game to a minimum. There were a couple of possessions late in the second half where, Villanova's shooting the ball as the shot clock buzzer's going off. So that's a whole minute off the game clock right there in the second half, just on Villanova's grinded out possessions. That's where this game was different than the first time that Xavier and Villanova played back in January when that game was played in the 80s. So.
Yeah, I don't think you can overstate the importance of the absence of Zach Freemantle in this one. Anytime you take away Zach Freemantle and you add a Justin Moore and Jordan Longino, that's going to bode well for Villanova. It's always tough to go into the Cintas Center. I think that's one of the toughest places you can play, not only in the conference but in the country. It's an away environment. I know they were talking about it on the broadcast. The students were lining up at like 7 a.m. to get in there. So it was crazy, crazy environment. Good win for Villanova, but I completely echo all of Paul's sentiments that I think the depth concern is being a little bit overblown here for Xavier. The emergence of Jerome Hunter has been outstanding. I'm still very high on this Xavier team. This is going to be one of the most fun Big East tournaments I can remember in quite some time.
I agree with that, Matt. I don't want to cut you off there if you had anything to say, but I just want to say real quick, just kind of on that point. I think Xavier's ceiling, we can get more into this later, but I think Xavier's ceiling right now, when you look at the Big East tournament and the NCAA tournament, a lot of it is going to ride on Zach Freemantle, because where Freemantle was very successful offensively, he wasn't or is not all that good of a defender. It's just clear as day from watching him over the last few seasons. He's just not all that talented of a defender. That being said, his offense brings everything to the table. He had almost 30 points in that first matchup with Villanova. You take that away, now look what happens. It's a much different, especially those entry passes down to the post. That's something that we were talking about on a Xavier podcast earlier this week, that he does exceptionally well, catch those entry passes. Now all of a sudden you don't have that. So I do think that the ceiling of this Xavier team is probably lower. Not probably, it is lower without Freemantle there. One, because of depth, but the quality of the depth. Again, it's not just because they're playing 6 players. Plenty of teams can play with 6 players and make deep runs to the NCAA tournament. It's the fact that Freemantle is as talented as he is, and he is not there. And the second thing along with that too is just the type of offense that Xavier has been running when they try to get the ball down in the post, when they try to spread the floor, when they try to get some of their 3-point shooters open for a team that's one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. That number has taken a significant dip over the last few games. They were the best 3-point shooting team in the country about 2 weeks ago. Now, I mean, they're still high up the list, but they're not toward the, they're not number 1, they're number 5, which I know sounds crazy to say, but from going down.
That's a big drop in 2 weeks.
Yeah. So I guess my point to this being, I just, the last thing I would say about Freemantle in this regard is that a lot of times you see these injuries and a lot of fans hope that they come back full strength right away. Freemantle's going to come back whenever he comes back, as long as he comes back, because I don't want to sit here and just assume that he is going to come back. I think a lot of times in sports, you see these types of stress fractures linger and linger and linger, and then he just gets pushed down the road, and he was never really fully able to come back. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying we have seen that before. So assuming he can come back, whether it's against Butler, whether it's in the first round of the Big East tournament, whether it's next week against Providence, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. But what I do know is you're not going to see him back at 100% right away after not playing for an entire month. And this assumption that he's just going to come back and all of a sudden the offense is going to be fixed and Xavier's going to go on this massive run, you have to sort of ease him back into it, which is why if you're a Xavier fan, you're hoping that he can get some minutes under his belt, maybe next Saturday against Butler, first round of the Big East tournament, whatever it may be, so that if he can come back in the NCAA tournament, it's not Thursday or Friday afternoon and he's getting 10 minutes off the bench against, a 12 seed or whoever it might be that they have to play in the first round.
Well, and that makes Xavier's draw in the Big East tournament that much more important, because whoever you get in the first round, I mean, if you want to play more basketball, you want to get Freemantle those minutes, you got to win that game to get to Friday, and that's going to be huge for them. I do want to talk about the Villanova side of things too, though, because this is the lowest total that Xavier scored all season, just 63 points in the game. I know it's a Villanova defense that has struggled this year, and I thought put together maybe its best performance of the season Tuesday night. Tommy, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I mentioned before, anytime you add Justin Moore and Jordan Longino to a lineup, I mean, naturally the defensive efficiency is just going to skyrocket. You saw in the win over Butler, they jumped 10 spots in KenPom, and they've been up and down since then. But yeah, the defense is something, talking to Kyle Neptune, that he stresses every single day he talks to the media. They want to build that team around defense and let the offense kind of figure itself out. And I think we're kind of seeing the results of that there. This was just such a quality win for Villanova. You can say the Fremantle, whatever. Going into the Cintas Center and picking up a win in any circumstance is outstanding for this Villanova team. They needed it. Whatever it looks like, it's a win over a number 16 team in the country on an away floor. This is going to do so much for them, for their morale moving forward, because they have a gauntlet remaining. But first quad one win, they got that weight off their back. This is not a team I would want to see in the Big East tournament.
No, it definitely isn't. Villanova's playing probably the best basketball of the season right now, which they needed. And you talk about the Jay Wright era. Everybody talks about the offense, but what gets lost in that is that the defense was also really good the whole time. There were only a couple down years in there, and that's why that's why they were a national champion twice. They had top 11 defenses in Ken Palm both of those years. So some really good defensive units, and that's very much a core part of the Villanova identity, as much as all the stuff they do on offense. Paul, what's your view from the outside here on Villanova?
I think Villanova, it's funny. I went back the other night after the game on Tuesday night, and I went back to the Xavier preseason podcast that I had done. And that was great coordination right there. Both of you taking a drink at the same time. That's like
the animations are getting in sync.
Synchronized athletes. I went back and listened to a preseason podcast that I had done where I went through with Rick Broering, who I co-host that show with. And we had predicted every game. We do it every season. It's one of my most fun things to do. I love doing it, going through and then going back and listening later and seeing how wrong you were. But one of the things that I was very spot on about was I said Xavier was going to win at Villanova for the first time since realignment. And then I said that they would lose to Villanova at Cintas because Justin Moore would be back and would be playing at his peak ability or close to his peak ability by that point. And that podcast was from November 4th, and you could have just listened to that as if it was a pregame show on Monday night, and it would have been almost exactly a replica of what happened on Tuesday night. And it is a testament to what this Villanova team has right now, that they can go out there and recognize why they got beat in game one, where they played more to Xavier's style, that high possession, get the ball up and down the court, play in the 80s, and then come to Cintas and play a lower possession game and get Xavier to play in the 60s and then eventually win that game. That's a huge difference for Villanova. I think it's a major step in the right direction. Villanova is still probably going to be playing. Is there any, I haven't looked, and I don't think there is there any ability for Villanova to not play on Wednesday? I don't think so. Is there? They're locked into Wednesday, right? They can't get to that 5 spot.
There might be like a 1% chance on that thing you shared earlier, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to look through the graph right now. They have the tiniest possible chance to be the 5 seed.
Okay.
Which I think would involve winning out and having UConn losing out.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
So you're telling me there's a chance. So we'll say that Villanova is going to be playing on Wednesday, which I know will be a very weird sight to see for a lot of Villanova fans. But at the same time, I think it gives you some confidence, right? Gives you a lot of confidence to be able to go on the road to a Xavier team that sure was shorthanded, sure it was depleted, sure it wasn't the Xavier team that you might then have to play. I mean, there's a very realistic scenario here. If you get in the lab and you run the simulations, there is a very realistic scenario that Xavier and Villanova are playing at 9:30 on Thursday night at Madison Square Garden again, or even in the 7 o'clock game. There's a very, very realistic chance that Xavier and Villanova play again on quarterfinal Thursday. So if you're Villanova, especially playing basically a home game there at Madison Square Garden, that would be very encouraging if I was a Nova fan to have then seen the result from the other day, but taking it also with a grain of salt that maybe Zach Fremantle would be back at that point. Desmond Claude had been hurt for Xavier. He came back, didn't get a ton of minutes on Tuesday night, only had 6 points. But still, as those guys come back, they're missing Cam Kraft. He's probably going to be out to the NCAA tournament, if not out the rest of the regular season. Kiki Tandy has had a few spot minutes here and there. Not a huge contributor to Xavier this year, but he also wasn't available on Tuesday night. So Xavier's really going through some depth concerns right now. And we'll see what happens the rest of the way, because now you're trying to play for seeding. You were the last 4 seed announced in that mock bracket reveal last Saturday. This loss to Villanova probably drops you back down to a 5 seed. Can you play your way back up to a 4? Because I think if Xavier wins at Seton Hall tomorrow night, or maybe tonight as people listen to this recorded, I don't know when you guys are uploading this, but Friday night, and then next Tuesday, or Wednesday rather, the Providence game, you win both of those, that kind of wipes away that Villanova loss, as long as you then beat Butler. You finish 3-0, and you're right back on that 4 line, then go into the Big East tournament. Whatever happens.
Yeah. When you look at the seeding projections too, if everything else goes to plan, that Providence Xavier game next Wednesday, it's always Providence and Xavier playing in Providence late in the season. This is the 4th year in a row we've had that. We've had a lot come down to that. The winner is probably the 2 seed. The loser is probably the 4 seed. So the loser is probably going to end up, and this is also assuming Creighton does what Creighton's been doing and keeps going. But then, so the losers probably played UConn, and if they get through that, which Xavier, I think, would have to somewhat like their odds based on what we've seen this season, winner of that's probably playing Marquette. And then on the other side, you're going to have the 2 seed probably playing a 7 seed Villanova. That's I think how it's going to break out, unless I think Villanova would need to beat Seton Hall, win out, and have Seton Hall drop one. They're 7 and 6 seed. Those can move around a little bit there. But so there's a real chance that whoever wins that game is probably seeing Nova. Whoever loses is seeing UConn. That's going to be a huge one. I do want to take a step back, though, because I know we've talked a lot about Xavier without Fremantle. I do want to ask how far, Paul, do you think this team can go when they have the fully healthy lineup? And what is it that you've seen here in year 1 of the second Sean Miller era that has turned the fates around from what we saw last year?
Sean has very clearly emphasized offensive production this year from Xavier. He talked a lot about that in his time away from basketball over the last year, between when he got fired at Arizona and between when he got hired at Xavier. He was doing the work with the Field of 68 and going on those shows with his brother, Archie, who also has gotten hired, and how those two were just going through all their offensive schemes, what they wanted to do differently, watching European basketball and trying to take some concepts from there and just apply it to this Xavier program this year for Sean. And I think you look at the way that Xavier has played this year has made me wonder what Xavier would have looked like in the last 3 years with a true point guard like Sule Boom, because he has been such a dynamic game changer for Xavier this year. He's a bit undersized, and I think that has gotten exposed a little bit over the last few games. But at the same time, he has played until the last 2, I would say 2 to 3 games, because he made a couple of mistakes at the end of the Marquette game. For as well as he played in that game, it's the classic 2 sides of the argument. You wouldn't be in that position without him, but if he plays a little better in that last minute at Marquette, you probably win that game. He had 2 costly turnovers. If they even don't have one of those turnovers, they probably win that game. You're not blaming him for the loss because you're not in that spot without him, but at the same time, he did give the ball away twice at the end of the Marquette game. Then at the end of this Villanova game, he has the ball, tries to drive the left side of the lane, doesn't even get a shot close to the rim. A lot of that was due to Villanova's defensive effort there, knowing what Xavier was going to try to do. That has been the style of Xavier this year. Try to get Sule Boom going downhill, try to get into the basket, get fouled. Did not work there. Did work against Cincinnati earlier in the season. Point stands that Sean Miller having a true point guard in Sule Boom has been a dynamic game changer for Xavier and their potential this year. When you ask me, Matt, about the ceiling and what I think the Xavier team can be, where can they go, what can they do, I think this is a true second weekend contending Elite Eight type team when they are playing at their full offensive potential. I personally, and a lot of people can disagree with this, but I have been a firm believer of this my entire life. Defense puts you in a position to win championships, but offense gets it done, right? You can look back to some teams that have had great defenses that, sure, they've gotten far, but you look at, a team like Baylor a couple of years ago, Gonzaga, these teams that really get down into the national championship games that can really score the basketball. It's why I have always questioned these teams like Houston that play in the low possession games. Now, I do like Houston this year, but these teams like Houston and UCLA that just want to go out and defend you and get you low possession, and not necessarily low possession because Villanova's had a lot of success with that. But I'm talking more about when you get into these low scoring games in college, you get yourself in a position where 6 points might feel like a lot, but that's only 2 possessions. And in a 51-45 game with 4 minutes to go, I mean, that other team is only 2 3-pointers away from tying a game when it might feel like there's a ocean between the talent of the two teams. And that's where I go back to liking teams myself that have a higher offensive ceiling, like Marquette, like Xavier does, like Creighton does, Providence to a certain extent too. But these teams that pride themselves on the offensive side of the ball and score a ton of points, I'm going to always fail by taking them farther in the tournament, because I think that at the end of the day, when you just got to go out and outscore the other team, when you just got to put up more points than the other team, can you do that? This Xavier team, when playing to their fullest potential with Zach Freemantle, can go out there and do that. We've seen it time and again this year. They won the close games at home. They beat Creighton. They beat Marquette. They beat Seton Hall. They beat Providence, all at home, all in close games, because they were able to just go out and outscore the other team. And I think when you look at what Xavier can do this year, what would make me nervous if I was a Xavier fan would be the reliance on a good matchup in the NCAA tournament, because I do think that Houston, this is going to contradict everything I just said, but I think that Houston would be a horrific matchup for Xavier, because I think they have the guards and are talented enough to get Xavier into that Villanova type game that would give Xavier a lot of trouble. And Xavier hasn't, that's where we've seen him struggle, kind of like against Butler, kind of like against Villanova. I personally look at Xavier and say, you get out of the first weekend from there, who knows what upsets have happened, who knows who beats who. I'll just say that Xavier with Zach Freemantle is a firm second weekend team in my mind. The question will be, do they win enough games down here, the 3 games left in the regular season, whatever they do at Madison Square Garden, to put themselves in a good enough position where they're not a 5 seed playing that really good mid-major tournament champion that has a dynamic guard that's going to give Xavier a lot of trouble in a 5-12 game or in a 6-11 game.
Yeah. And it's this whole season feels very matchup dependent for March Madness for everybody. That's not just a Xavier thing with the teams we've seen here. Tommy, is this all matching what you've seen out of Xavier? Do you think they can go farther? Are you worried about their potential to get out of the first weekend?
Yeah, I mean, when we had Norlander on here, he said that every one of the top 5 teams in the Big East has those losses. They can be first week. They could be first game teams. They could be the round of 64 exits. And that's not exclusive to just Xavier. That's everyone. I don't think it's going to happen with Xavier. I really like Sean Miller. I like Paul's point that defense only takes you so far. You need the offense, and Xavier certainly has that. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to see the matchups. It's hard to speculate right now, but generally I am higher on the Xavier team because they have so many weapons on offense, so many ways they can beat you. High on the Xavier team.
Well, and how many times have we seen a team get carried by a guard who gets hot in March? Sule Boom is absolutely good enough to make that happen and single-handedly carry Xavier. I think my only concern here is what we saw kind of in the DePaul and the Butler games. You're one bad matchup away from, or one, you know how these tournament games get. If you get the Thursday or the Friday afternoon slot in the first round, you're playing at noon in some city where nobody cares that you're there. There's no environment.
Max A. Smith is lighting you up.
Yeah. But the next thing you know, it's one of those where your shots aren't falling because you feel like you're playing in an empty gym, and then the other team starts going on a run, and they're the underdog, and they're going to get the crowd into it, and you end up in a weird environment. And I'm not convinced Xavier's defense is good enough to win them a game if that happens. That's the issue. I think I like what Paul had said about Xavier's defense being good enough to kind of allow the offense to win games. I also look at the UConn game at UConn. Xavier's offense is kind of what won them the game and got them into the game, but the defense getting the stops late is what won them. And that, to me, raised the floor on Xavier. Seeing that, I would have liked to see it against Marquette last week. Winning on the road in the Big East is tough without Zach Fremantle. Omax Prosper made a great putback there. It happens. But, yeah, it was the
one thing I would say about the defense is I think the defense has gotten significantly, might be too strong, but I'll say significantly better in the last couple of weeks. I mean, I thought they played a fantastic defensive game against Marquette. They just didn't box out at the very end of the game. I thought they played a fantastic defensive game, or a pretty good defensive game against Villanova, but just in the end kind of got grinded down and didn't make the shots. I mean, Xavier had more turnovers in the second half against Villanova than made shots. That's not going to win you a game. They had 10 turnovers and 9 made field goals. That's not going to win you a game.
No. And I look at the X factor to me for Xavier kind of becomes Jerome Hunter, because I think he can be your sixth man who can take you to the next level, where if you have a tough matchup or a big body you got to throw out there, like he just gives you a different element. I look at what Xavier did against Providence, the first game in particular, Jerome Hunter on Bryce Hopkins. Like if Jerome Hunter can give you that kind of defensive performance, when you get to the second weekend against some of the really good teams you're going to see out there, Xavier can upset a 1 seed and Xavier can go to the Final Four. That can absolutely happen. But man, I think the ceiling is so high and the floor is so low.
Yeah, and I mean, you look all the way around the Big East. I said on the show that I host every day, I do a daily, usually 5 to 10 minute podcast every day, kind of just wrapping up what happened the night before in college hoops, called the Rebound Rundown. And on that show, I was talking last week, May last week or the week before, about UConn. And you look at what UConn's done. Dan Hurley hasn't won an NCAA tournament game at UConn, but right now they're starting to look like they did back in December. They're starting to look like a very, very good basketball team. And is this a team that has the highest NCAA tournament ceiling in the Big East? It very well could be. I mean, the answer to all of this might be a 5th-seeded Big East tournament team in UConn. I just, I don't know. I have question marks about I do have question marks about Villanova. That is true, but I have a hard time sitting here and questioning Marquette when they go to Creighton and win. And I love what Creighton has been able to do this year, because Creighton's been able to win multiple ways. They can get you up in the 80s and win, or they can play that low-pace game and win. That's what I really like about Creighton. UConn, though, there's just something about them that I keep coming back to the fact that I just hope I don't get burnt by UConn in the NCAA tournament and pick them a round or two too far. But I love what they bring to the table this year. I really do. Yeah. And now that they're playing as well as they are, is this a special run for UConn? You go to Albany, right? Albany's a first weekend site. If they're in the East region, they go to Madison Square Garden. I don't know if it's all lining up for UConn, but maybe it is.
Yeah. And we'll touch on this briefly, because I want to look ahead to this weekend's games too. But that's a perfect segue to the UConn Providence game that we saw last night, where, man, I could not have been more wrong in my prediction of what was going to happen in this one. I thought Alex Caraban absolutely dominated Bryce Hopkins at both ends. Bryce Hopkins held without a rebound for the first time since being at Providence. Jordan Hawkins looked like Steph Curry out there, the way he was running around off the ball. Incredibly impressive. And Devin Carter, who's in contention to win Defensive Player of the Year, couldn't stick with him because of the way they screen for him, the way they run him around. And UConn, 55% offensive rebounding percentage. If you do that with how good the rest of their players are, you can't give those guys second chances with how good that team is. So I thought they looked fantastic. And if we see that UConn team the next couple of weeks, they might be the best team in the Big East. We'll find out. They're on a collision course potentially with Marquette in the Friday slot for the Big East tournament, which will be interesting. Tommy, what did you take away from that one last night?
I just had to do a double take and check the box score, because you just blew my mind that Bryce Hopkins didn't have a rebound in that game. Ed Croswell only had 5. They had 20 rebounds as a team. I mean, Bryce Hopkins had 20 rebounds by himself a couple of games ago. So, I mean, yeah, just to, again, you guys are killing it. Just echo everything you guys are saying. UConn is playing like this team they were back in December. I think it's them and Creighton that have the highest ceilings in here, but I still don't want to count out Providence yet. I found this stat earlier when I was looking through a little bit of history of the Big East in conference play. Out of the last 5 years, the champion of the Big East tournament in 4 of those 5 years, and you don't have to screw your thinking cap on too hard to figure out who's the one outlier in this scenario. 4 of those 5 years, they are top 1 through 4 in conference offensive and defensive efficiency. The champion of the Big East tournament, only 2 teams fit that mold this year. That's Providence and UConn so far. Creighton's knocking on the door. I think those are the 3 teams that have the highest ceiling. They'd be in my top tier of teams in the Big East right now, with Xavier trailing close behind.
Yeah. Some good teams playing great ball, and we didn't even mention in there Marquette. They're going to have a chance to clinch a share of the league title this weekend. They went on the road at Creighton and played potentially, when you consider the circumstances around that game, the best half of basketball we've seen in the Big East this year, where they did coming out of the break in the second half and finishing it off with Tyler Kolek getting back-to-back shots there at the end over Ryan Kalkbrenner. Paul, is he going to be the Big East player of the year after that?
You'd have to think so, right? I just don't see if Shaka Smart is going to win Coach of the Year, which he's going to win Coach of the Year, and he'll probably be in the running for National Coach of the Year the way that Marquette's going right now.
He's already a Naismith finalist, so I have to consider he's going to stay up there.
I just look at what Tyler Kolek has done this year and what this Marquette team has accomplished compared to what their expectations were, and it's hard for me to say that the leader of that team isn't going to be the Big East Player of the Year, which I'm not sure anybody would have expected back in October, except anybody in that Marquette locker room. But credit to them, credit for what they've been able to get done. They are a fun team to watch. I always like watching teams that can score a lot of points. I just think it's fun basketball, and at the end of the day, we all like to be entertained and watch fun, high-scoring basketball, or at least I do. And they went out there last night. They went to Creighton. They got it done on the road. They buckled down in the second half when they needed to. And I think it was not to be too dramatic or anything, but Kolek hitting that shot over Kalkbrenner at the very end to win the game, I think, is a symbolic shot of what we'll probably hear on Wednesday afternoon when those awards get announced.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it feels like it's been neck and neck. We were just kind of waiting for a moment from somebody. And that was it. I think a lot of guys were still in contention, and probably still are, depending on what happens next week, if somebody puts something special together. But if you're looking for the guy, where you say you can't tell the story of the Big East in 2023 without this guy, from Big East Media Day all the way through now, it's Tyler Kolek.
Yeah, absolutely is.
Go ahead, Paul. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So, he's in the driver's seat right now, and he has 3 cupcakes left on the schedule just to stat pad, essentially. He's got DePaul, Butler, and St. John's left. So, barring any just otherworldly performance from a Sule Boom or Bryce Hopkins, I think it's his to lose.
Yep.
Yeah. I just want to note, Paul, I don't know if you're seeing this. We got a comment here on YouTube. Okay. And this is probably your favorite account, if I had to guess. The Jerome Hunter fan club. Thank you for this. Don't let them disparage Jerome, Paul. He says, we have not been disparaging him at all. I'm a Jerome Hunter fan at this point.
Yeah, we're all Jerome Hunter fans on this. I brought him up.
Jerome Hunter fan club is one of my favorite Twitter accounts. I don't know who runs the Jerome Hunter fan club Twitter account, but he is a loyal caller into our weekly show. And he has done his due diligence and his work throughout the season to make sure that Big East fan bases are well aware of what Jerome Hunter has produced on the Big East court this year. And Xavier would not be in the position they are in now without what Jerome Hunter has been able to do, especially defensively. Even when he's been serviceable offensively, what he's been able to do defensively with Zach Freemantle being out has been huge. To win that Providence game, without Zach Freemantle in the lineup is massive. It can't be understated. And to be able to trust a guy like Jerome. Last year, Jerome Hunter was booed off the floor at Cintas. It is hard to put into words how poorly Jerome was viewed among the Xavier fan base last year. It was bad. It was an ugly scene. When he would get in the game, he was chucking threes. But I think what goes back to the difference in the Xavier offense this year versus last year is that his freshman year at Indiana, Jerome Hunter took 63 threes. He was 19 for 63 on the season. His sophomore year at Indiana, he took 73 threes. He was 25 for 73. Last year at Xavier, he took 66 threes. He was 14 for 66, 21%. This year at Xavier, he has taken 6 threes. 6 threes. And he has made one of them. And I think even one or two of those 6 threes were like, throw it up at the end of the shot clock, like just got to get something up, maybe the end of a half, not a rhythm, step into it, pocket pass type 3. I think it just goes to show what kind of a player Jerome has evolved into under Sean Miller and what his potential has been able to do for the overall potential of the Xavier team. I've been really impressed with it. I think, and he talked about it a lot after the DePaul game, just how happy he is and proud of the progress he's made. So Jerome Hunter fan club should be very happy with the name that he that he puts his account after. Absolutely.
After watching what Jerome Hunter did to Bryce Hopkins, I have no choice but to be a fan. After that was incredibly impressive. I haven't seen many do that to him this year. I know we're gonna talk about the games this weekend, preview them. I'll just mention the other scores. Pair of late night games last night, Wednesday night. Butler goes on the road.
You're not just about to blow over these two games, are you? Go ahead.
I am, in fact.
These two games. Go ahead, blow over these two games.
This was a certified Wednesday night preview here of the Big East tournament with the games last night. Butler goes into Chicago, wins over DePaul. 59-58 is the final in that one. DePaul's last win is still that game over Xavier. They have not won since that. They won 2 out of 3 against Villanova and Xavier. Have not won since that point. So, and they got healthy in that stretch too. So things are not going well. Yeah. And St. John's completes the season sweep over Georgetown, 79-70 down in DC in the potential Rick Pitino Bowl. Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe. So I was trying to think. I was talking about this earlier. Does the winner of that game get Rick Pitino, or does the loser of that game get Rick Pitino? Which side of the coin you fall on? I don't know.
I think the loser needs him more. Georgetown got swept there by St. John's, so I think Georgetown needs him more right now. That's for sure. Yeah. The way things are going there. Let's look ahead to this weekend. We got Friday, Saturday, and Sunday Big East hoops this weekend. It's all going to start Friday night in New Jersey. What better a place to spend your Friday night than Newark, New Jersey? Xavier at Seton Hall, 7:00 Eastern on FS1. The first game between these two teams was close. Seton Hall had a shot at the buzzer of Cintas to win and to tie and didn't hit it. So I look back at that shot. That was a foul up 3 situation, and the way Shaheen Holloway drew up a play to get the ball in so fast that Xavier couldn't foul was incredibly impressive. Seton Hall played him close. Paul, what do you see in the return matchup here?
Well, it's going to be very different without Zach Fremantle in it because Fremantle led Xavier in scoring in that game. So now as Xavier transitions back to having to win this game on the road, I was wondering what this game might look like about 2 or 3 weeks ago for Seton Hall if they were in more serious bubble conversations. Like, was this going to be a Pirates team that was coming out very strong in this game and thinking to itself, man, if we get this quad 1 win, which actually, as of right now, I don't think it would be a quad 1 win for Seton Hall as of right now. I think Xavier dropped down below 30. I didn't see their update today, but I think they were below 30.
They're at 35.
Okay, so
quad 2 game. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I just more so mean it for the prospects of Seton Hall's season. Now it's a little different. Now, what I will say is that I'm not sure that really matters necessarily because I this game, I think, is sold out, or the lower bowl is sold out. I saw some tweet about, what Seton Hall is expecting in this game. The NCAA tournament implications would have maybe taken it a little higher in the importance ranking for Seton Hall, but still, the Pirates and their fans understand and appreciate what this game would mean, especially going into the Big East tournament, what Shaheen Holloway is trying to build here. To your point, Matt, that was a beautiful play that Shaheen drew up at the very end of that game to get a wide open three in the corner. That shot was about 10 feet away from where I was standing at that game. And the ball came right down the court so fast, you didn't even really have a time to react and figure out where the ball was. And then, boom, it was in the air, rimmed out. And that was an absolutely a golden opportunity for Seton Hall to send that game into overtime. I will be very interested to see what kind of a Xavier team shows up out there in Newark tomorrow night, because it's really hard for me to sit here and predict when we've seen Xavier play very well against, granted it was DePaul, but they played well against DePaul. They played very well against DePaul without Zach Freemantle. Should have beaten Marquette without Freemantle on the road. Should have won against Butler without Freemantle on the road. But you make some mistakes in the late stages of that game. That drive by Butler right down the court as time expired. The drive by Marquette finishes with a putback lay-in. So if I'm Xavier tomorrow, this is a game that you really want to go 2-1. Obviously, you want to go 3-0, but you really want to go 2-1 down the stretch. This is a, wild as it is to say, a quad 1 win for Xavier or a quad 2 win for Seton Hall. Somehow that math makes sense, I guess. But that's the way that this game is playing out, that somehow, some way, this is a more important resume game for Xavier than it is for Seton Hall. That's not my department to argue with. But as Xavier tries to stack these quad 1 wins, and the other thing for Xavier's schedule, too, is that Cincinnati is 5 spots away from being a quad 1 win, and Florida is 5 spots away from being a quad 1 win. You win this game and get some help from those two, all of a sudden you jump immediately this weekend from 5 quad 1 wins to 8 just in the matter of 48 hours, depending on how this weekend shakes out. Cincinnati can absolutely do that. They're on the road in Memphis. Florida could do that, but they're missing Colin Castleton. So how does this all work out for Xavier? This is a huge game. I think if you are a Xavier fan, you understand that you do not want to play UConn in that 4-5 game at 2:30 on Thursday afternoon. A lot of Xavier fans do, because they say, well, we've beaten UConn twice already. They're a great matchup for Xavier. I understand that. I question the health of Zach Freemantle at that point. The last thing I would want to do is play a pseudo road game at Madison Square Garden in the Big East tournament against UConn. I'd avoid the Huskies at all costs in the Big East tournament, but that's just me, and I think I might be on an island with that take, or at least among Xavier people that I know and talk to. I would much rather be in the Thursday night session, whether it be at 7 or 9:30, and whether it be against Seton Hall or Villanova. And a lot of that is going to be decided this weekend about whether Xavier beats Seton Hall and whether Villanova can pull off the upset at home at Wells Fargo against Creighton. A lot of that's going to lot of implications for Xavier in those two games.
Yeah. So, Paul, we are going to ask you to make a pick here on what you think happens Friday night. Who are you picking?
I think Xavier gets it done. I think Xavier goes 2-1 the rest of the way. I think they beat Seton Hall and Butler, and I think they lose to Providence. I think that this is a good matchup for Xavier. I think Providence is also a good matchup for Xavier. I just can't pick against the Friars at the AMP, the Dunk, the AMP. I can't pick against them there.
I call it the what do you call it? The Duncan Civic Pavilion. We're just gonna put them all together.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I'm gonna pick Xavier to win this game. It would not shock me if Seton Hall won this game. I don't want to sound wishy-washy. I am going to say Xavier wins it, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think that this is a very feisty, good Seton Hall team that could come out here and get the job done in front of a very good crowd. But I do think that Xavier recognizes the opportunity in front of them, and they don't want to let their seed line slip in the tournament. And all of that ties back into the fact that you need to win this game and stop the bleeding. And I think they can do that.
Tommy, who are you picking?
Yeah. I called it the Civic Donuts Center or Civic Donuts Pavilion on Twitter the other day, Matt.
Oh, yes.
That one as well. And I'm still not going to let you. I heard that comment before Paul made his pick. You would rather spend your Friday night in Newark, New Jersey. I could think of 1,001 other places I'd rather spend my Friday night than Newark, New Jersey. Anyway, Paul did a really good job kind of covering that from the Xavier angle, and I agree to the most part. So just to play devil's advocate a little bit. I mean, Seton Hall is going there. They have to be hungrier at this point playing at home than this Xavier team. Xavier is a very offensive minded team, and it's a tough road game. They're 1-4 in their last 5 road games. It's not an ideal matchup. The Xavier team is as good as they are on offense. Of course, we talked about it all night. They're going to be shorthanded in this one. With that being said, I am still picking Xavier to win because I think they are just that talented. But this game is going to be very close.
See, I hate to make that. I feel like this game is way too close for us to all pick Xavier. But I'm also going with Xavier here because I think Seton Hall's defense, for as good as it is, we saw what happened late against Creighton. We saw the way they got blown out of their own building by Marquette. You go back to the non-conference when they played Iowa. I don't think the defense matches up well against the top echelon of offenses, and I think Xavier can provide that. So if Xavier comes out and plays that way, I don't think Seton Hall can play with them. And if they bring that, not only is this going to be a Xavier win, it won't be that close. If they don't, this can go exactly the way the Seton Hall UConn game did at the Prudential Center, where it's going to be grinded out, close game at the end. Whoever makes the play last wins it. But give me Xavier in this one. And that's your Friday night basketball, I believe. Yeah, that's going to be the last Friday night Big East basketball until we get to the Big East tournament. Let's look at Saturday here. We got 2 noon national games, which I don't know the last time that happened in the conference. We'll start on Fox with Creighton at Villanova this is at the Wells Fargo Center, I believe, right, Tommy?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Give me the lowdown on this, Tommy. What's going to happen?
What's going to happen? So a little deep analytics you can't find on KenPom. I did not watch the Villanova-Xavier game for the most part. I watched the last 2 minutes because I was at the Villanova women's basketball game watching Maddie Segrist just put up another 1,000,000 points.
How about her? She is just awesome.
Dude, isn't she? Incredible.
Awesome.
National Player of the Year, her. Anyhow, and I will not be watching the Villanova-Creighton game on Saturday. It's my girlfriend's birthday. I'll be out and about. I think that's a good omen for these Villanova Wildcats. But, no, seriously, I do think they are hitting their stride. They're coming back home playing a Creighton team that isn't as scary as they were earlier in the year. Their starting 5 is as good as any starting 5 in the country. But, I mean, Kyle Neptune and Justin Moore reiterate, we're seeing about 70% of Justin Moore. And if that was 70% of Justin Moore that we saw against Xavier, I will take that any day of the week. I can't wait to see what 100% looks like. He can only get better from there, I hope. There are just going to be games where his shot is not going to be falling. We've seen that happen. But, yeah, I think Villanova's deeper. I think Villanova's more disciplined. They kept it close on the road in Omaha the first time these two teams played. I think they get it done at the Wells Fargo Center.
Paul, you agree?
I'm taking Villanova. I think they get it done. I think they have enough. I think that these guys have been there. They've done that. I know it's Neptune's first year, but I'm taking Villanova. I really do. I think that Villanova might be starting to turn a corner, maybe. But if this is a Creighton blowout, then this is going to tell me a lot about Villanova. I'll put it that way. I'll leave it at that.
All right, I'll go Creighton here. Partially to disagree with you guys, but also I thought Villanova was good enough to get a win this week. I thought it was going to be in this one. They would lose to Xavier. I still don't see the depth and the consistency with Villanova to do this twice in a row, especially against a team as good as Creighton, a Creighton team with as good as they can play. I wouldn't be surprised to see this go a lot like Creighton's game at Seton Hall, where it's close for a while, and then somebody on Creighton takes over and takes it to a level that somebody on Villanova can't match. So I'm going to go with that. I'll take Creighton in this one on the road. I think we should have a good one, though. This should be a really good one. We have another one at the same time. This one will be on CBS from the Garden. UConn at St. John's. St. John's playing at home here, looking for a sweep over UConn, which is crazy to say. I'm excited to see. I should be at this one. I'm excited to see what the fan makeup is going to look like between these two teams. Tommy, does St. John's get a sweep?
You know, we're coming up on the 55-minute mark here of this podcast. UConn's hitting their stride. St. John's is coached by Mike Anderson. Give me UConn.
Give me UConn. Same thing.
Yeah, I'm not taking St. John's in this one. Maybe, but no. We'll go
firm,
all
Matt.
UConn here.
Take the Huskies.
Yeah. Well, we're all picking the Huskies in this one.
That's fine.
Ben.
Yeah.
I do think it'll be an interesting game. I think it'll tell us a lot about how UConn. It'll tell us if UConn has developed when it comes to ball handling with the issues they had in the first one. I want to see how their guards actually react to that because they struggled at home the first time. If St. John's brings that again, but yeah, UConn might have.
Give me UConn by 10, but if Andre Curbelo plays, give me UConn by 20.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe here. We might be we're coming to a close of the Mike Anderson era. It feels like we'll see if that actually ends up being the case. The late night game in the Big East Saturday night, DePaul at Marquette, 7:30 Eastern on FS1. Marquette with a win. They clinched the number 1 seed at the Big East tournament, and they guarantee themselves a share of the league title thanks to Providence's loss last night. Paul, does Marquette get it done against DePaul?
Yep, they do. Marquette, Fly Eagles. They're going. They're doing it. They're getting it done. They're not waiting around any longer. I think it's a gold out. I saw. They got something.
Ben Gold, 20 points.
Yeah, I'm not picking against the Golden Eagles here.
Are you doing that, Tommy? Are you picking against the Golden Eagles?
Yeah. No. I'm not picking against the Golden Eagles. This is a unstoppable force versus a very movable object with this Marquette offense and DePaul defense. I'm taking the Golden Eagles here by a lot. Fly, Eagles, fly, baby. Go Birds.
Yeah. And for the people not subscribed to our YouTube and watching us live on there, Tommy pinned the comment from MK. Stubbs might not be the guy. Yeah, this has gone about as poorly as it could have gone in year 2 at DePaul. Give me Marquette in this one at home. I know they've had their struggles against DePaul in weird games in the past, but man, DePaul is not playing good basketball right now. Marquette's playing very good basketball right now. I'm not getting in front of them in that environment.
How do they get worse as they get healthier?
I don't understand that.
I don't know.
Yeah. One more game on the docket for the weekend. A little Sunday afternoon Big East hoops from our nation's capital. The Friars heading to Georgetown, Capital One Arena. Another nationally televised one. This one's going to be on Fox for
Let's go. Showcase.
This could potentially be the last home game. It should be the last home game of the Patrick Ewing era. Does he send it out with a win? Does anybody think Georgetown's winning this one? Got a shake of the head from Tommy.
I got to be 100% honest. I'm picking. Who did you say they're playing? Providence?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't even. Yeah. Give me whoever. Give me whoever. Give me Providence. Yeah. No, they're not doing this. They're not doing this. And I have been. If you have been following me on Twitter, you know that I have been a firm believer in the Georgetown Hoyas this year.
Yeah.
Very relative to expectations of what Georgetown was supposed to be. I picked them to win that game against DePaul. When they won that game, I don't know. I watched that game last night against St. John's. I also thought they might get it done last night against St. John's. They gave me some hope in the second half. Then that hope was viciously snatched away as the game came down to the finish line. I don't know.
Yeah.
No. Give me Providence.
Yeah. I saw our own Zach Penrice had tweeted this out. I think this is the lowest crowd attendance last night they've had all season long. Very curious to see what the crowd looks like, especially if we assume this is Patrick Ewing's last game as a head coach there. It's a Sunday afternoon. Might be a one last send-off for him. I think Providence fans should be rooting for there to be a lot of fans there, because once you get into a quiet gym, weird stuff can happen, especially against a team that has the talent that Georgetown does. That's the kind of environment where you can go cold. I hope it's a somewhat decent send-off for him here, a decent environment. And I do think the Friars end up getting this one done. It was a little bit closer than I expected in the first matchup. But especially after what happened Wednesday night, Ed Cooley's going to have his guys ready to go. That's for sure.
I think Georgetown can keep it to under 10. I mean, they're one of the best teams in the conference for keeping you competitive through 30, 35 minutes of a game before they just completely self-destruct. So, I mean, Providence is going to win this game. Old Takes Exposed can come after me if they would like, if anything weird happens in that open gym. But, yeah, I'm taking the Friars here and pretty comfortably.
Yeah.
Now, as wild as it is to say, I don't know if it is an extremely hot take, but I don't know if it's all that hot of a take to say that Georgetown, out of the Fantastic Four of Georgetown, Butler, St. John's, and DePaul, out of those four, are they the most likely to do something dumb and maybe win a game or two in the Big East tournament? They're not going to, but I'm just saying, of those four, like St. John's and Butler are going to knock each other out, and then neither one of them are going to beat Marquette.
Georgetown has the talent level, and they have a nice team makeup. Like, the issue there is coaching, but they got guards who can do stuff. They got wings who can do stuff. They got a center.
Primo Spears is a good player.
Yeah, like St. John's has the issue where they just have no shooting, and that's not going to change here. Georgetown doesn't have that weakness. Butler has no offense. Georgetown has no defense, but I think it's a lot easier to just have a good defensive night, or more likely a bad offensive night from the other team, in which if you're playing Seton Hall in an 11-6 game late at night, you could absolutely be getting in that one. And then if Georgetown gets through, they'd face whoever the 3-seeded, which is probably Creighton. That's a game that shouldn't be close, but we've seen Creighton drop stinkers this year. I like them more than the other three you mentioned. I agree there.
I mean, none of them are going to do it, but I'm just saying, if we're just having some fun here and talking about it, Georgetown would probably be my pick, but none of them are going to do it.
If you put money on it, you're going to lose the money, so don't do it. But if you had to pick.
True. All right. Yeah.
That's going to do it for us in this episode. Paul, thanks for coming on. Tell the people where they can find you.
Absolutely. So if you're watching, you can see it. Just my name, Paul Fritschner, Fritschner. That's my Twitter handle. You can follow me there. If you like just a quick 5 to 10 minute rundown of what's going on in college basketball, it's a lot of Cincinnati area stuff, but I do spend a lot of the podcast talking about national stuff. It's called The Rebound Rundown. Find it on Apple, Spotify, anything like that. If you're a Xavier fan, I host the Musketeer Report podcast too. But if you're just a general Big East fan, Rebound Rundown will help you out with that. 10 minutes on your morning commute, get you on your way on the day. I recorded around midnight, 1 a.m. every night, Monday through Friday. So that's where the people can find me, and I will find you guys, or at least Tommy, I don't know. Are you going to the Big East tournament? You going to be at MSG?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'll see you guys there.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks for coming on, Paul. Thanks for coming on, Tommy. As always, we'll see you, I think, Monday evening for our next show. Subscribe on YouTube if you want to catch us live. Follow along on Twitter. Subscribe wherever you're listening to this to stay up to date. And as always, thank you very much for listening. Have a good night.